normal.
All right, the chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down speed off. Bring in, speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks, you know the drill. I see the little line jumping. That's a good sign that you should be able to see and hear me. John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight here, ready for another exciting, melodic episode of Virtual Astronomy Live in partnership with Intrepid Museum. We have a fantastic show today coming up, as you can tell by this fine thumbnail behind me here. Let me make sure that y'all can hear and see me just fine. I see a ton of 5x5s over in the chat. Excellent. So like I said, this is going to be a fantastic show today. Late breaking news. We were working on a show that was talking about music in space. We're going to have former astronaut Cady Coleman with us, talking about how she went to space on more than one occasion and made music. And then late last week, we got information that Chris Hadfield was also going to be able to join us for the show. So the special astronaut guests are coming up here in about 27 minutes. We do a little bit of a pre-show. We'll have Alicia hanging out here with me in just a second. But that's the drill today. We're going to have a little pre-show here talking about other music that we have yoked into the solar system and beyond. Of course, we got some golden records to talk about with that. And then in about 30 minutes, we will have the astronauts on. We only have Chris for a limited time. He's got about 30 minutes with us, so we'll talk with him and Cady. And then we'll talk with Cady for another hour after that about their band, about making music, about all the different things, the ways that you can increase the experience. I don't even know if that's the way to say it. But let's get going with the pre-show. And welcome to the shindig, Miss Alicia Siegel. Alicia, how you doing?
Hey, I am doing so great. I am so excited. This is going to be such an amazing show, you guys. We are going to be hearing from Chris Hadfield and Cady Coleman. And who better to talk about this subject, right? Aside from just being amazing people, I mean, they're musicians in space, right? They've collaborated with the Chieftains and Jethro Tull and the Bare Naked Ladies. And Chris Hadfield made the first music video in space, right? Yep. His amazing cover of David Bowie's Space Oddity.
Yep.
Please ask him about that later, Das. It's going to be amazing.
We will. We're not going to have enough time to ask all the amazing questions, but we will savor every moment we get with Chris and Cady here. Y'all, if you don't know who Alicia is, she is the producer of public programs with Intrepid Museum and now, erstwhile, oftentimes, commentator on some NSF stuff. You made your appearance on NSF just a couple streams ago, didn't you?
I did indeed, yes. Completely foggy Vandenberg, I know, as expected, but yeah.
You heard a rocket launch on that one, huh?
I did. Oh, I heard a rocket launch, yeah.
All right, so let's get going here with the pre-show. Like I was saying, we have had music that we've made here on the ground, and we've sent out into the universe, and we've had music that we've made in space and sit back down to the ground. We're going to talk about them in that order, but tell us about the golden record.
Yeah, well, so yeah,
and everything else.
Music and art, have really gone hand in hand with humans going out and exploring new things in general. And at its core, I think it really has to do with, the comfort and the familiarity that music brings to us. You can think back a few years ago to when NASA programmed Curiosity to sing happy birthday to itself all the way out on Mars. How sweet, right? It's just part of who we are.
Was that sweet or was that like,
I mean, it was sad, but sweet still, I think. That's cool, right? But, we actually talk about this sometimes at the Intrepid regarding life at sea, too. So, of course, way back then you had, sea shanties, when people were out exploring. But now even, during wartime, those young guys in the Navy, they're out at sea 6 to 9 months at a time. And music would really just keep them sane. They had USO shows that would come to perform. And they had a radio station actually on board the Intrepid during the Vietnam War.
Yep.
And they would also form bands with one another. The Intrepid even had its own band. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. The radio show and the band.
Exactly. And so it's a great way for them to bond together. And as Cady and Chris, I'm sure, are going to talk about too, astronauts do the exact same thing. They play music together in space, and they also form their own bands here on Earth as well. So You're going to hear about an upcoming concert they're actually going to be playing out in Texas in August. Yeah. So yeah, music's a great way to tell stories, especially about space. You could look back to the early days of the space race. You had songs like Beep Beep by Louis Prima. That was a play on the Sputnik craze at the time. Of course, the beeping heard round the world. Of course, again, David Bowie's Space Oddity, Ground Control to Major Tom. I'm sure everyone knows that song.
Yep.
Huge hit. Very much inspired by the space race. Also actually perfectly timed because it was released just days before the Apollo 11 launch. And actually one of my favorites is a response song to that. It's called Major Tom Coming Home by Peter Schilling.
Okay.
Oh, guys, it's so good. It actually used the Major Tom character and tells that same story, but from his perspective. And that one is a real 80s synth earworm. So definitely check that one out if you have not heard it already. It's called Major Tom Coming Home by Peter Schilling. So yeah, there's a lot of music inspired by space out there. But really, yes, the ultimate music album in space is, of course, I think, the golden record on board the Voyager probes. And I've got my earrings on for it, ready to go today. I got my gold record earrings on. But actually, Voyager itself has been in the news quite a bit in the past few weeks. I'm sure you might have seen some headlines lately about how NASA is tragically powering down that famous Voyager probe. And, they're going to be killing Voyager. Oh, no.
Come on, headlines.
In actuality, yeah, no. Misleading, a little clickbaity. Don't worry. They are still out there. They are still going to be communicating with us for a while. But let's do a little bit of a refresher about Voyager, first of all. In 1977, NASA sent two probes called Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 out into the universe to explore, to help us get a little bit of better understanding of our solar system. But in particular, as you can see here, the timing of these launches was very specific because they lined up with this once-in-a-lifetime alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune that occurs only every 176 years. So it would let us get images and some data from up close to all those planets. And then because of that very specific layout, they wouldn't need as much fuel or even time to get there because that gravitational pull of each planet would give them what they call a gravity assist. So essentially flying by each planet would bend its path, increase its speed, and just enough to, swing it on to the next one and essentially cut their trip in half. Now, keep in mind, though, that the primary targets here were just Jupiter and Saturn. So the Voyagers were built to only last about 5 years, which would be just long enough to make it past there. So 1977, we launch them on their way. We learn more about things like Jupiter's red spot. We saw its moon Europa and its cool icy crust over liquid water. We saw active volcanoes on Io. It goes on to Saturn. We learn about its rings. We learn about its moons and the atmosphere around its moon Titan. Really interesting things for us to keep our eyes on. So the years are going by and we're checking off all of these boxes of what they want to accomplish, and the spacecraft keep going. They're still alive. So they think, okay, let's keep going too. So they tacked on Uranus and Neptune for Voyager 2. We got to see more moons. We got to see Uranus's ring and Neptune's storm, the great dark spot. So we get past all the planets. After all those flybys, they're still alive. And the scientists know, all right, well, at this point, we're not really going to be flying close to anything enough to take pictures. So they decide to turn off the cameras to save some power. But just before doing that, one last hurrah. Valentine's Day of 1990, they turned the cameras around on Voyager 1 to take one last amazing series of images, which has now been dubbed the Solar System Family Portrait. So this is a mosaic. Perfect timing. There you go. This is actually the only series of images that have Venus, Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all arrayed around the sun just like that. And it's also this very famous shot of Earth that inspired Carl Sagan in his famous speech, where he referred to it as a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, a pale blue dot. So really putting things into perspective for us, really making us feel super teeny tiny, right?
I mean, they called us a mote of dust. Forward, a mote of dust. There's pretty teeny tiny there.
It's a pixel.
It's a pixel.
Yes. But now, fast forward 40 years. Okay. Honestly, besides these incredible images that Voyager gave us, what I think is the coolest part of all of this is that the spacecraft are still going. They are still alive. They have stretched their lifespans from just 5 years to 45 years.
Yep.
And now they have entered, as you can see here, interstellar space beyond the heliosphere, which is this protective bubble of particles and magnetic fields that the sun creates. And they're still going. They're flying 35,000 miles an hour, different directions, billions of miles from home at this point, still sending us back information.
Yep.
And they're going to keep doing it until they run out of power, which yeah, sadly might happen in the next few years. But bringing us back to the news here, I mentioned before, 1990, they did turn off the cameras to save power. That's not unusual. They've
Right.
actually been slowly powering down their systems for many years now to try to extend their lifespans. Voyager 1 actually only has 4 of 10 still operational. So
Count it,
they're
though.
making
That's enough.
choices. Exactly. I mean, we're still getting stuff. So yeah, we have to make some choices about that to keep them running. Also, yeah, they are getting some strange information from Voyager 1 right now too. The location that it's sending back looks kind of like randomly generated or not physically possible, which raises a few other questions. But sweet little Voyager there, yeah, might be getting a little senile in its old age. But
As long as
still,
it doesn't start singing like a whale.
wouldn't that be something, right? All of a sudden we hear that.
That would be bad.
That's music in a way, right? So yeah, they're still just trying to kind of extend out its lifespan until at least 2027, which would be the 50th anniversary of its launch. So, they're still out there. We're holding out hope for them. But let's bring this back now. That's the missions. What about this record thing, right? So what's the connection to music? So scientists knew that they were sending these spacecraft on a one-way trip, and they realized, okay, they're never coming back. So why not attach a note from Earth? Right? You can think of it kind of like a message in a bottle, just, chucking it out into the cosmic ocean, and maybe someday it'll get picked up or responded to by some distant civilization, right? You never know.
Yep.
So they recorded this message. It's a time capsule, really, on a 12-inch golden record. You can see here, a very popular format for sound recordings at the time. And they mounted these records and a record player on the side of each Voyager to sail on for eternity, or, at least until it crashes into something, right?
Like a record player, too. Like an actual record player?
Exactly. A record player as well. Now, again, though, we have no idea, right, if life is anywhere out there in the universe. Although I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that we probably aren't alone out there. I don't know. Let us know in chat if you think that there's aliens. But I do think it's also safe to say that whoever is out there probably does not look or sound or think or read the way that we do. So if distant life forms did find this spacecraft and did find this record and record player, how would they even know what it is or what it represented or how to use it?
They'll
right?
probably
I
just
mean,
play
I
Frisbee
bet,
with it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I bet a lot of, the viewers out there, maybe younger ones, don't even know what a record is or how to use it too, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, really thinking about this as a thought experiment. How do you write a message for someone that you don't know anything about in the distant future, far, far away? What language do you use, right? What if they can't even see or hear like we do, or even at all? And you also have to keep in mind, you have a very limited amount of space to do this all into. So NASA really had to invent a brand new system of communication, code really, that could teach anyone anywhere in the universe how to play this record if they found it. And so if you've ever seen this image here of this, golden disc with all these weird symbols all over it, this is what I'm referring to. This is a 12-inch diameter gold-plated aluminum album cover for this record. Okay. So they decided to start off this new language with something pretty common, a building block of the universe, hydrogen. So that is what you see there, thank you, on the bottom right of that cover, okay? So the thought was that any spacefaring civilization would probably understand the properties of hydrogen. It's the most commonly known element in the universe that we're aware of. And they thought, okay, they might understand it enough to understand what this diagram means. So this shows the transition time of the spin movements of the two lowest states of hydrogen, the proton and the electron. So DOS, you might want to do some DOS art here. I know everyone loves DOS art. Maybe help me illustrate here. So you'll notice that the top of these two circles, there are two vertical lines with a dot.
Yep.
One is on the left, one is on the bottom, okay? And on the other one, the dot is on the top.
Right here and here. There's there, and one's on the bottom. You can see, like, one is a little stick like that, and one is a little stick like that. And I'm going to ask chat, who here looked at that and was like, oh, yeah, hydrogen. I get it. Yeah, right.
I know, it's a little bit of a stretch. Just go with me, all right? Just go with me.
Luckily, chat's not an alien civilization. They act like aliens sometimes, but they're not actually aliens.
We can't even explain it to our own people, right? All right, so that's important, though, right? Because that is showing the proton and the electron of hydrogen in its spin rotation there.
Right.
So the real important part of this is that when that spin movement happens in real life, electromagnetic radiation is released for about 0.7 nanoseconds. So that line in between is meant to show that. And that little tick mark underneath it is meant to kind of symbolize that amount of time. So it's hoped, I know guys, that aliens would see that tick mark as a basic unit of measurement that they could use.
What's
There you
nano?
go.
It's like a little U, isn't it? In nano,
0.7, yeah.
like
with
in that, like nano.
nanoseconds.
I think it's a U.
There you go.
Correct me if I'm wrong, chat.
The hope is that they would take that tick mark, see it as a unit of measurement, and then from there could figure out the rest of the diagrams.
My gosh.
I promise it gets easier from here.
They're lucky they
Okay.
didn't send it down to Earth, because I'm not sure that we would have figured that out very quickly.
I know, scientists' brains think a little differently. All right, so moving to the left, though. So now we've got the bottom left here. This is meant to show where we live.
It's a
It
sparkler.
looks like a map, doesn't it? No.
Oh, yeah. Looks like a map.
So that giant starburst you see there, we on Earth are right in the center of all of that. We are the dot in the center. And the direction and the proportional lengths of the lines coming out of that are where distant collapsed stars are, so pulsars. And the period of each pulse is written next to each line in that measurement,
In
right?
chicken
so
scratch.
theoretically, if aliens can make that connection, maybe they can triangulate everything in the stars there and come find us and come say hello. Simple, right?
All right. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. All right. So then the pictures above that, the top left of it, show the placement and the elevation of the stylus on the record, how you play it. And looking at that, I mean, it does kind of, right, from above look like a record, and from the side, the record player there. And that has markings around it as well. So again, using that unit of measurement, it
Right.
tells us how quickly, how the speed, right, to turn the record to get it to play correctly. The top one says 3.6 seconds per rotation. That's about 16 2/3 RPM.
Okay.
And the bottom one actually has the entire playing time of the record, so 54 minutes. So let's imagine, guys, go with me here. We are on some distant civilization, right? Let's imagine we've got eyes. We can perceive this thing. We are advanced enough to understand what hydrogen is and how it works, and we can somehow figure all of this out. What would we hear? Well, another question for you all. What would you put on a record that's meant to represent all of the human species at this moment in time?
I almost feel like we need to step back and be like, this is what happens when scientists and engineers send music into space. Maybe we need some musicians to send music to space.
There you go. That's a thought. Hey, we need more of the arts, right? That's what STEAM's all about.
Yep.
Add the arts into STEM.
So
But, you know,
what do we put
honestly,
on?
creating this record was an opportunity for us to really reflect on ourselves as one unified species. And they knew that the record obviously might never even be played, but just creating it and that whole process really reminded everyone of who we are and where we come from. And what's actually really bonkers to think about is that someday, billions of years from now, that record might be the only remaining evidence of humanity.
Ah. Hey, I have to real quick, Alicia, I have to go back to here because it's not a little U. Thank you, chat. Nano is just an N. It's not a little U. It's an N.
Okay.
Of course, like 18,000 people correct me. I'm like, oh my gosh, who let this guy on the show? I let me on the show, actually. So moving right along. Sorry. Making the
Amazing.
record.
Thank you for correcting us. All right. So, of course, yeah. Okay. On this thing, thinking about this, what is the first thing we want to say? Of course, what you see in all the movies. The first message we wanted to send, we come in peace.
Yep.
It is the voice of the UN Secretary General at the time, and he sends greetings. He says, we step out of our solar system and into the universe seeking peace and friendship. But of course, don't forget, English is not the only language that's spoken here on Earth. So
That's
they
true.
also included a variety of other greetings in 55 different other languages. They started off with Akkadian, which was spoken actually in Mesopotamia about 6,000 years ago.
Okay.
And ended with Wu, which is a modern Chinese dialect. So all these greetings they wanted to include because they really wanted to represent one Earth community, but with many unique different parts,
Right.
just like how the world is today. Now, there is an interesting side story actually about this part. Carl Sagan was behind this part of the record. And he later said that they only had about a year to put all of this together. And most of the speakers as a result then came from Cornell University in upstate New York, where he was based, and also the communities nearby. But what I love is that apparently the speakers weren't given any instructions on what to say, other than that it had to be a greeting to possible extraterrestrials and it had to be brief.
Ah.
That is it. So
what would you say? Somebody just like
right?
gets like that email shows up in your inbox and it's like, hey, could you record something real quick? That's like a message to aliens, but you got like 8 seconds in your native language, please, or in a specific language, I guess.
I mean, right? Like, what would you even? What do you even say? So a lot of people, of course, had variations on hello.
Yep.
We wish you peace, or we hope to meet you someday. But there is actually one that I think is pretty funny. It is, how are you? Have you eaten yet? Come visit us if you have time. As though they're like, hey, come on over for dinner tonight. Like, no problem.
That seems unclear. Like,
I know,
are you hungry? We're over here. Like, wait a second. That might send the wrong message.
It's the dinner bell. That's really what it is. It's coming in. I don't know.
Please, they should have said, please don't eat us, but we're happy to share our bountiful planet or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's the greetings. There is more though, of course.
Yep.
So the sounds of Earth too are more than just people talking, and they realize that other people, other creatures, whoever out there, actually probably have no idea what something like oceans or birds or thunder or even heartbeats sound like, right?
Right.
And we take all of those sounds for granted here. So they added a bunch of recordings of other random sounds of nature on there too. And then, of course, guess the topic for tonight, music.
Music.
So, Doss, I have a very important question for you.
Uh-oh. You didn't ask me this in advance. You're just like...
All right, here's the question. What do you think is the most popular genre of music in space?
I want to guess classical, but since that's what I want to guess, I bet you it's wrong. Because that's just always how it works out with me. Wait, what?
Neptune.
So that's the end of the show. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We're just going to turn off your camera.
Sorry. I know. But you know what? I'm sure Chris and Cady are really good at playing them because they really rock it. Okay, sorry. Anyway, let's move along. All right, you want to see Chris Hadfield? Let me finish. All right, so Voyager.
So anyways, Chris Hadfield and Cady Coleman will be here.
At least it's not another cow joke, right? Okay.
Here's a picture to talk about.
They wanted to include music samples from around the world with a variety of eras and different cultures.
Okay.
And it really is the ultimate mixtape. So you've got classics, like you said, you've got Beethoven and Bach and Mozart. But then you also have things like Aborigine songs from Australia and panpipes and bagpipes and a Navajo chant and even some good old rock and roll, Johnny Be Good. And another fun story about that, there was an episode of Saturday Night Live the year after the records launched where Steve Martin was playing a psychic. And he says, oh, the extraterrestrials have found the record. And after all of this time, they finally sent us a message back. Send more Chuck Berry.
Send more Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry, of course, being the writer of the song Johnny Be Good.
Right,
so a lot of fun music on there. And then if that wasn't enough, on the other side of the record, there are also pictures. But remember, this isn't a digital disc. There's no JPEGs or anything like that. It's actually encoded within the audio waveforms themselves. And that is what you see on here now, this top right. It shows you the symbols. On the top there, the symbols show how to break up the waveform data. So each picture is 0.008 seconds. Okay. And then the symbol below that shows that each of those sections is one out of a total of 512 scan lines that make up a completed image. So scan lines, kind of an archaic 70s technology now.
Yeah.
But sort of think of it like blinds in a window or like a woven blanket. Each strip gets its own, piece there. It gets put together to make one larger picture.
Yep.
And within each of those strips, if you code the decibel levels to show it as lighter or darker, you can actually draw out the image, which is really mind-blowing. So it starts off with that image on the bottom there, that calibration circle.
Right.
That circle in the rectangle. So if they see that, they've done it correctly and they can move on. And there's 115 other pictures on there, mathematical definitions based on that hydrogen measurement. There's pictures of planets and cell division and human anatomy and geography and animals and people and technology.
All sorts of stuff. Just a smattering of experiences from Earth. If you've played Kerbal, you know what scan lines are, because one of the things you can do in Kerbal is go to a specific source and you can have a specific instrument on board and it gives you something that sort of simulates being in scan lines. So there's a thing in Kerbal that does that as well. Here on the Golden Record, I really hope that we hit some, well, not hit, like crash into, but I hope that it reaches some very, very bright aliens who can decipher all of this.
Hey, maybe there's aliens out there playing Kerbal so they would understand how to do it.
There you go. So
that's Voyager, the Golden Record, everyone. I know it's a lot to figure out, but I don't know, maybe we won't even have anyone find it ever, but that really wasn't the point of the project. Again, it was really just meant to be this special little time capsule of humanity on Earth. So yeah, that's your ultimate album in space, I think.
Yep. And we've got one more thing. We're coming up to where we're going to get our astronaut friends on the show. But Alicia, there's a very special event coming up next month. Not anything to do with the Golden Record, but something to do with the Shuttle Enterprise that's there. Oh, well, you just have it on the background. I don't have to show it on the screen. That's
well, you
coming
can pull
up.
up that graphic anyway. It's got information on it.
There
we
you go.
So yes, one last thing before we move on to the main event. I know we've got a ton of shuttle fans out there. Yes, give us your exclamation point shuttle in the chat. I know that. Yeah, I know we've got shuttle fans. So just want to quickly plug that in 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks, July 14th, we have a very special behind the scenes experience with the Space Shuttle Enterprise coming up. We are going to have former astronaut Mike Massimino and our curator of aviation, Eric Boehm. They are going to actually take you inside of the Space Shuttle Enterprise over Zoom. I'll actually be there hosting it as well. You'll get to see me again.
Nice.
So
it's not even behind the scenes. It's like inside the scenes. Like they're going to go inside.
That's right. So yeah, if you've ever wanted to see what that's like inside the Enterprise, and I promise you, everyone, I have seen it. It is not like what you would expect. It is not like the other orbiters. All right. So if you ever want to see what that's like, now is your chance. You can find out more information about this program at our website, intrepidmuseum.org.
Right.
And I hope to see you all there.
All righty. Excellent. Well, y'all, I think what we're going to need to do is hop over and see if we can get our astronaut friends on. Alicia, thank you so much for all the interesting information about the Golden Record and the music that we've sent out. We're going to continue talking about music here, but give a big round of applause for Lisa Siegel, producer of public programs. There's a lot of P's in that title for the Intrepid Museum. Always a pleasure, Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Have a wonderful virtual Astronomy Live, everyone, today. This is so exciting for us. We cannot wait. Say hi to Katie and Chris for me.
Will do. All right. Thank you so much, Alicia. And here's the plan, y'all. I am going to roll a little bit of information about Intrepid's STEM outreach and the cool things that they do there at the museum while I get the astronauts on the Zoom call with me. So in just a couple minutes here, we'll have Chris Hadfield, Cady Coleman, and our moderator, Summer Ash. We'll be talking with them for a little bit coming up about the music they've made in space. So don't go anywhere. Check out the video if you need a drink or something like that. Maybe reach up, stretch your legs. But when we come back in just a minute, we will have our astronauts talking about making music in space. Now's the part where I have to click on the right thing and go like this, and we'll see y'all in just a minute.
Every year, more than 1 million visitors embark on a voyage of discovery at Intrepid, a museum on board an aircraft carrier devoted to the intersection of history, science, innovation, and service. They come to the museum to learn, to explore, to engage, and to see firsthand the artifacts that marked critical moments in history and spark our future. They are up close and personal with living history, learning about the past, while contemplating the possibilities of tomorrow through 21st century technology. Within Intrepid's steel walls are moments. A sense of wonder when a student sees history come alive, goosebumps when a memory is sparked, and understanding when a returning service member connects with a fellow veteran. But Intrepid's reach extends far beyond this great carrier's steel walls and decks. Every day, it is making a difference in the lives of so many, in our immediate neighborhood and all around the world. Intrepid also brings learning experiences to students participating in CASA, New York City's cultural after-school adventures program throughout its 5 boroughs. Designed to support the diverse needs of learners in New York City public schools, Intrepid's CASA programs integrate history, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math into out-of-school time experiences to help build in-school success. Our vet video chats reconnect veterans with the legacy of service.
My name is Charlotte. I'm really happy to be connecting with you all. And these are artifacts that are related to work, but also to leisure.
We are a ship of ideas, sailing forth to communities near and far, to schools, libraries, housing projects, senior centers, correctional facilities, veteran centers, and children's hospitals to engage and inspire those who can't come to us.
All right, folks, here we go. We've got our astronaut friends on with us. We've also got Summer Ash, and we're ready for the main event here. We're going to be talking about making music in space, like I mentioned. Thank you so much for joining us, Cady Coleman and Chris Hadfield. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Happy to be here.
Well, a real joy. Thanks. Let's make some music.
All right. And, of course, you've seen Summer on the show before. Summer Ash will be our moderator, taking some questions. If you've got questions for us, tag us in chat. We'll see if we can get some of those in, but we do have limited time, so I will be very choosy when it comes to questions. But Summer, Cady, Chris, I will let y'all take it away.
All right. Thanks, Doss. Cady and Chris, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you both, and I don't want to waste any time, so I want to just dive right in. Because you are both retired veteran astronauts, and you have both done music in space. And I just want to ask really quickly, did either of you grow up in a musical household?
Cady first.
If I have to think about it, probably no. No, I only have images of my dad actually mumbling during the church service, singing along, sometimes being the only one still singing when it stopped, right?
I did actually. My mom was a classically trained pianist. We had one of those upright pianos in our house, and music was sort of the cornerstone of all events, birthdays, holidays, things like that. And my mom was a good singer and a natural harmony singer. And all of the kids learned to play some sort of instrument. And when we get together now as adults, we hardly even talk to each other. We all just sort of grab
start playing
and play and sing. So yeah, definitely music was a big and vital part of my growing up.
I love that. Cady, how long have you been playing the flute for? Did you start before school age?
Since sixth grade. Somebody, I think going into sixth grade, they said, does anybody want to play an instrument? And I just remember thinking, I do. And I played the flute.
And so both of you have brought instruments up onto the space station. Chris, your guitar, was that your guitar, or was there a guitar based on the station?
The guitar that is on the space station right now is the one that I played when I was there, and it's actually been there since the summer of 2001. So for 21 years, and it was put there by the NASA psychiatrists and the NASA psychologists because they recognize that music is necessary just for mental health, as part of human psychology, and so yeah, it's been there forever. It's a little Canadian guitar. But I picture Summer, once the psychiatrists and psychologists decided that, then a little group of NASA people all drove down to Webster, Texas, to the guitar store. I forget what it was called, guitar shop. And you can imagine 6 NASA people walking in and saying, "We want a guitar." And, some long-haired guitar instructor guy is looking at this group going, "Yeah, okay, got some real hot ones here." But they wanted a smaller bodied guitar so that it could fit inside the locker of a space shuttle, if possible. And we bought a parlor guitar made in Vancouver, a Canadian guitar, just by chance. I'm Canadian, a Canadian guitar, but it's by the company called Larry Vay. And they bought one to go and bond on the Earth so that we had the same thing on Earth. So, we could practice and fit. And then the other one has been in space, and it goes around the world 16 times a day. And it has been for 21 years. So I don't know how many world tours that guitar's done.
Right. That's the most traveled guitar.
Well, but to sort of continue with that story, you'd think they would have learned their lesson, because there's a lot of people who've played that guitar and, played along with that guitar up in space. And then it was after I got home, I think, so 2011 or 12 or so, they said, well, Cady, now they want to have another guitar up there. Like, do they need another guitar? I mean, don't they already have one? I'm like, music is a together thing. And who knows? I mean, in 6 months, you can teach yourself the guitar and learn on the internet by this time, right?
Right. And didn't they have to also do something slightly special to the guitar because they want to make sure it's as least likely to burst into flames as possible?
It's actually, it's a great place to be a guitar. because the air pressure never changes and the humidity never changes and the temperature never changes. So the guitar stays in tune. They did, though, have to check to make sure that, when you buy like a new pair of running shoes and you open the box, there's that distinctive, new running shoe smell or new car smell or whatever. You don't want those smells on a spaceship, because the only place for those smells to go is sort of to get filtered by your lungs. So we want to off-gas stuff. You want to get all that smell out of stuff before you launch it. And so they had to check that the guitar wouldn't, have a bunch of stink to it. Also, that it didn't create any sort of electrical field, because you don't want to have something that's generating electromagnetic interference for all the other stuff that's going up there. But a simple 6-string acoustic guitar, it eventually met all of NASA's requirements, and it's been up there ever since.
Real quick, we've got a question, if we could. Chris, Chad was asking if there are extra guitar strings for the guitar up on the ISS.
Who was asking?
Viewers were asking.
Oh, okay. If you were going to space and you're thinking, what small thing could I bring that would be useful up there? I kind of looked at that and I thought, I'm going to bring maybe a capo. I'm going to bring a tuner, maybe. I'm going to bring some guitar picks. I like hard guitar picks. And I'm going to bring some strings. And so we've got all of those up there. But it's not a very humid environment. And so the strings last quite a while. It does pretty well. It's a steel string guitar. But yeah, we every real guitar, there's always someone up there who plays a few chords. But whenever someone who plays guitar a lot shows up, in their little kit of stuff that you're allowed to bring to space, a lot of them throw in just one new set of strings, just so that, if they break one of the strings, they won't be playing a 5-string for 6 months.
It's almost like a community project to keep it maintained. Like they take a little bit of their personal allotment and make sure the extra parts are up there. Excellent. Yeah. Summer, go ahead.
How are the acoustics of the International Space Station?
Cady?
I'd say it depends. It's just like down here on Earth, it depends where you play. When I first, one of the first big music bravery things that I did was I got recruited to play in a dinner theater that was just starting up. And so I always warmed up in the bathroom of the restaurant before everybody got there, because in there, everything echoes. It sounds really like you're kind of like, oh yeah, I can play. This is going to work. And so playing in the airlock is like that. There's a lot of metal around. Playing in the Japanese module up in the sort of storage hat, that's that big thing up on top of the station. It's all cloth bags and it's kind of dead sound in there, but maybe the right place to play at midnight or so. But actually the cupola is right in the middle of the station, and it's just the right mix of hard things and soft things, and everybody's sleeping at either end of the space station, and the cupola is kind of in the middle, so it's a pretty safe place to play. No, you're not going to wake anybody up if you're the flute player.
Right. Now you're in a pressurized environment, and so a lot of things are the same as they are on Earth, but are there any differences with how you need to hold the instruments, especially you, Cady, because sort of the angle or the power?
I would think it's true for Chris too, but I never really asked him. But for the flute, like when we're taught, we go, well, there's 3 points of contact, up against your lip and this finger and this thing. So there's sort of 3 points of contact, but we forget that point number 4 is gravity, is actually steadying that flute when you're playing. And so up there we don't have that, and it does bobble a bit, and you have to kind of figure out a way that you're going to stop that. Which if I played a gazillion miles an hour, maybe that would bother me, but for my playing, it didn't bother me all that much.
If you ever look at any guitar player on Earth, they're doing one of 2 things. Either they're sitting and the guitar, the guitar's got that classic hourglass shape. Well, one of the curves of the hourglass is so it will sit on your leg. Gravity is going to keep the guitar from moving left and right because of that leg-shaped cutout in the bottom of an acoustic guitar. Or they have a strap around their neck and they're standing playing, and gravity is pulling against the strap. So the guitar will stay in front of you, so that when you go up and down the fretboard, even though you're putting a left-right force on the guitar, it's going to be stable enough that it'll stay in place. When you're in space, gravity-based cutouts and straps don't work at all. And so I thought about, what if I stuck a big square of Velcro on the back of the guitar, and then I put like Velcro on my belt buckle or something, and then maybe I could just Velcro the guitar to myself. But if you think about how a guitar resonates, of course, you don't want to be damping on the two side, wood pieces, because that's where a lot of the vibration keeps the sound going. So instead, what I did, if you watch carefully during the videos that I did playing guitar up there, I've got it pinched under my right bicep, because just on the edge frame of the guitar up there, I could hold it in place. And that way I could sort of keep it free of my body. Because otherwise, every time you do anything, the guitar I found the other is you have muscle memory of the weight of your arm. And when you play guitar, when you're fretting up and down the fretboard, you can go to the 5th or the 7th without looking, just because you know how that feels. But when you take away gravity, feels wrong. And my guitar, I was working with a producer back on Earth because I was recording an album up there, and he sent me a note saying, "Hey, your guitar playing's really messy." I was like, "You come up here and play. Of course it's messy. I'm having trouble. I got to relearn how to play because the guitar is all over the place." So yeah, it's different. But what I tell people is, if you want to know what it's like to play guitar in a spaceship, go in up against a wall, stand on your head, stay on your head for like 3 hours. With the guitar lying, and then while you're upside down, pick up the guitar and play. And that's sort of what it felt like at first. Your voice is messed up, holding the guitar is messed up, everything's just kind of weird, and you got to figure it all out under a new set of circumstances.
Yeah, I read somewhere that you said your voices go a bit nasally because of the fluid distribution.
It's sort of the opposite, because there's nothing to drain your sinuses. So your voice is as if you have a bad head cold, so you're always kind of stuffed up, and so when you sing, you get some resonance in your head from the hollows. Some of ours are bigger than others, but the hollows that are inside your head, and that's gone. And also, you don't have gravity pushing down on your diaphragm. It's weird to sing standing on your head. Just try it. And so it's like that. And so I found it was harder to get a full breath, and I didn't get that same feeling of resonance that I do. I hardly ever sing on standing on my head on Earth. And so it was good. Fortunately, a lot of people have seen, I did a cover of Space Oddity by Bowie. That's got a lot of high notes, and it was easier to hit the high notes. I'm glad it wasn't, House of the Rising Sun or something that I tried to cover.
Well, that is my favorite. What if I'm right, Chris?
It's true. Good song.
Cady, with your flute, I read that Ellen Ochoa played hers and said that she had to hold herself in place, that if she was really untethered and played, even just her blowing would kind of move her a bit.
I guess that's true. I actually just liked to play that way up in the cupola. And in fact, as beautiful as the view is, sometimes it was nice just to shut my eyes and just, you're sort of bunking off little gently sort of ebbing around, and you're not in any danger of going anywhere. It's just this really, I don't know, it was just this way to be very present in space for me. And so, blowing your flute really does actually move you to some small extent. And so that probably did add to it. Ironically, I think we have a lot more women astronauts now, but in fact, I know we do, and I'm glad for that. But there was a time then basically if you and another woman astronaut had the same hair color, then you were by definition hard to keep straight. Okay. And then if you both play the flute. So Ellen Ochoa and I would frequently be mixed up, just in kind of media kinds of things. I think Ellen was honored in Irish American Magazine at one point. I received numerous Hispanic honors. But the sort of icing on the cake is that when each of us retired separately, our small town papers each published a picture of the other one above the fold in the paper.
I'm getting
so
the
Ellen
side by
and I
side
send
here.
These things back and forth constantly.
Wow. Speaking of hair, though, I know, Das, there's a video, I think it's the one that you do with Ian Anderson, but any of the ones where you're playing, I mean, you kind of look like you have rock star hair being in space.
It's definitely a good place for hair. In fact, I think it was an especially hardship for Chris because I have this like automatic card that says she is somewhere else and something is different. Something is like, kind of strange. And so that was actually pretty fun to have big hair. Down here, it's always kind of in your face and you're getting it out of your ears, but up there, it follows you everywhere. It's never in your way. It might be in other people's way. But I love this duet with Ian Anderson. It was really a very special event. We played this for the very first time on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight. That was the anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's launch. And I was in space and Ian Anderson was in Perm, P-E-R-M, Perm, Russia. And so on this day that, where one human left the Earth, we played this duet between Earth and space.
That's amazing. Chris, you played a duet, Earth and Space too, didn't you? Or a piece together?
I did a bunch. I flew in space 3 times, of course. And but I'm like Cady, one of my flights was a long duration flight and mine was just a little under 6 months. And during that time, I did an educational thing with schools. There's a Canadian band called the Bare Naked Ladies, and I co-wrote a song with them. And I did a duet with actually at the time 700,000 kids simultaneously. Everybody knew the song. I was like leader of the band from space, and schools and educational systems right across Canada and around the world. There's a song called Is Somebody Singing, which if you notice the letters of that are ISS, International Space Station. But that was a really fun duet. And then I did a duet with our band where because Cady and I have been in several bands together, but we're in a band. Actually, we have a concert coming up in Galveston in August. But we did a duet with me from space, leading from space, one of the songs that I'd written while I was up there. And that's so much fun. There's a time lag, and you may have been going back on the questions, because you can't, just because, the speed of light and the distances are so high and your signal's got to go to a bunch of places. So by the time I play a chord, if I just listen through my own chord, it goes all over the place and back and down to earth and then all over. It would be like, 2 or 3 seconds later before I would hear myself. So you can't listen to yourself play through the full loop.
Right.
And therefore you can't listen to people on Earth join in with you just because of the time lag. Right. So you sort of just have to confidently play and hope everybody back on Earth.
Well, in fact, Chris, I was going to say, I was part of that school event, not the one you spoke of that was Canada wide, but there was a smaller school event back at the Johnson Space Center where we had a school band, singing and their instruments. And then I think Dan Burbank and I played along as well. And the deal is that, like you said, you can't listen to the other. So you're playing along and we're following you. And so everything is on time down here. And in fact, I got to do that for one of my, we have a weekly sort of medical checkup with the docs, and they often try to put something in there that's fun for us. And I got to play with Chris and Mickey and Dan and Steve Robinson. They couldn't really hear anything that I played, but it really meant a lot to me to play together. It really just felt like we were together.
Yeah. I think that song we were talking about is that Moondance?
That was one of the duets. That was with, we did that with the Chieftains, didn't we? Or who did we do Moondance with?
We did Moondance with the Chieftains. There's no video of that, Das, with the Houston Symphony, which was really just tremendous. But then Daughter, the one that starts with Daughter.
Daughter of My Sins. It's a song I wrote up there and recorded. And yeah, we did that with a conference.
At the entertainment gathering. And
right.
I'm always interested in how media meaning just, the ability to project images and sound in a way that it reaches people. And, this shows you, we're not going to hear the audio, but it shows you Chris taking us through the space station, and going through the space station just like we would. And that's Mickey Pettit on the left, singing on stage in California. And this is a video, so it's pre-recorded of this particular one was pre-recorded, but it doesn't have to be. And it's a compilation of him. What are you doing here, Chris? Putting stuff in the freezer?
Yeah, with a dry ice kind of freezer, yeah.
And so, so if you picture the whole stage, we're actually singing on stage, and actually, this is an event that brings a lot of different musicians there, and so there's a whole bunch of really talented people playing along with Chris, and it really brings space to Earth. And hopefully, it was nice for you up there when we were doing it too, Chris.
Yeah, music is so important. It's hard to go through a day ever without music, right? Even if you're just playing it in your own head, and it's gone with us on every exploration ship we've ever been on. The early ships, they invented a whole type of music on board ships, hornpipes and sea shanties and things, right? Because music is so important, and that isn't going to stop just because we're leaving the Earth. And music often, when it gets to a new place, it starts to evolve. Mm-hmm. That's how we created bluegrass and jazz, because of the confluence of people in a new location. And so I'm really curious as to how music will evolve once we start living for long periods on the moon. There's going to be music there, and it'll be a real different type of moon dance, I guess. We're going to have a whole different evolution of it, and so it's really fun at this point to have been in on the early stages.
I've got a question from chat real quick, if I could, from the viewers, if I could. Did either of you practice playing your instrument on a zero-G flight before you went to space, or in between times of going to space, to try and do some troubleshooting?
I didn't. The time on those flights is pretty precious in terms of being dedicated to experiments, and I figured, it's going to be an adventure to have it up there no matter what. In fact, I had actually 4 flutes up there. I brought Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull's flute up there, an old 100 and something years old Irish flute from Matt Malloy from Ireland, and a tin whistle for Patty Maloney, and then my own flute I brought up there. So I had 4. I figured I could get one of them to work.
I was sort of the opposite. I was like, I want to record and write and record while I'm up there, but that's which flute? Oh, that's your tin flute, right? Or tin whistle.
There's a tin whistle. That's Patty Maloney's tin whistle. It's he passed this past winter, and he's just this icon of bringing people together all around the world. Not about sort of Irish music, but just that people together will make music together forever.
An immensely talented leprechaun of a man. It was so great to be able to play with him from space and on Earth. But I had the opposite problem. I wanted to record. I had no idea exactly what equipment I was going to have up there. And so I brought a few adapters as part of my personal kit. And what I eventually ended up doing was just floating this Sennheiser microphone in front of me, because you didn't need a mic stand. And then I just had a little preamp, and then went straight into my iPad and used GarageBand, so that at least I had a click track and could overdub multiple times on the same click track. But I didn't need to track this in a zero-G airplane. I just tried a bunch and I thought, okay, there's enough raw material here that I think I'll figure out some way to be able to record up there. And fortunately, the quality ended up okay.
Can we go back to the mention of you guys being in a band together, which I believe is also with other astronauts and other astronaut family members? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Cady and I have been, by definition, in astronaut bands ever since we met. And but this one, it started in a basement in Star City. When I was there with one of the other astronauts, his wife is a singer, terrific singer. He's Don Pettit, and his wife is Mickey Pettit. And Mickey and I would sit in the basement over in Star City and play songs. And then whenever someone who was over there coming over for training, if they were a musician, they'd join in. And we thought, when we get back to Houston, we should try and, play more together, maybe play out in public or something. And so we formed a band then, and there was this funny little bar called the Cafe Blonde. And so it was Cady and myself and Mickey, and then since then Steve Robinson joined, and he's an iconic astronaut and a terrific strings player. Plays everything from steel guitar to stand-up bass to banjo, and then there's a guy who has just a beautiful harmony voice and a good guitar player named Dan Burbank. And so that's the band. It's 4. I don't even know how many days in space we have together, because everybody has done long duration, I think. Anyway, lots of days, lots of spacewalks, but we've been playing together as a band for almost 20 years now. And we've played all over North America, and we're having the chance to play at the big Grand Opera House down in Galveston in early August, I don't know what it is, 6th, 12th, something like that. But but that's going to be a lot of fun. With COVID, we haven't played in public in a couple of years, and this is a big chance to get together with astronauts on the band, space imagery behind us. We'll tell some stories and play a bunch of music I think that people will love.
And it is on August 6th. What I think is special, we've been playing kind of somewhere. The pandemic did some interrupting, but we've been playing somewhere, a couple times a year, and just someplace, one of our hometowns. But to play in Galveston, which is right next door to Houston, means that we're just basically right next door to the Johnson Space Center. And I think that the music that not just our band, but the other astronaut bands and other NASA bands play, when somebody like that is playing in one of the clubs around, people come. I think they come to hear the bands, but they also come to be with each other. It's this way of bringing the space community together, and to be playing in such a large venue where I think that it's going to be amazing who comes, all these different folks that are involved in space. And I just want to say that I think that the bar scene after our show, there are going to be some pretty interesting conversations going on all over Galveston.
I can give the viewers some information on that, y'all. I'm going to put a link in chat, and if you'd like to get more information, this is the right link here, right? The Grand 1894 Opera House. And the link that I am putting in chat, if you're within striking distance of Houston, maybe that's something that you could look into, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful hall. It's sort of classic old 1890 whatever, ornate, beautiful acoustic. So that'll be a lot of fun. And when I look back, Cady and I were both astronauts for over 20 years serving. But when I look back to some of my greatest memories, it was those nights with some other astronauts, but not flying spaceships, but together looking around inside the music as we're playing in some local club or bar or something, and creating something together. This alternative activity to the hard work of and training and being away from home. And it's one of my most treasured memories of living and working in Houston for a couple of decades. And so this will be a chance to rekindle some of that too.
Well, and even, we're an international space station, and there's a lot of bridge building to do, where we come from different places. And one of the places, do you remember the Hoagie Ranch? Or the Hoagie Palace, as we used to call it, the Hoagie Ranch. And it'd just be a place that people would know they could find us on a Friday night. And so this is where the Italians and the Russians this is where, the space folks would come, and we get to know each other in a way that was a little easier than in the hallways of NASA.
I love that so many people think of NASA and astronauts as, techies, the engineering, the science, all of that. But I find that kind of anywhere where you get a bunch of people together, especially ones that are trying to solve problems, you're going to have really creative people, and they express themselves artistically. And so I think it's also really cool to showcase the fact that a lot of astronauts have all of these other very creative talents. And like you said, music is so universal that's just a great way to bring it together.
It's at least solar system. We don't know if it's universal yet, but it's at least in the solar system.
Well, and I think, it's different people on the team have different talents. And I like to play along with people. And that's how I finally ended up, practicing up on the space station, is playing along. But it does take somebody to kind of stand up and say, let's play. And that person for the longest time was Chris, for the astronaut corps. And there's other people that play, but for our band was kind of cohesive. But somebody has to say, okay, let's play together, and we're going to be here. We're going to do this, and made it so as somebody like me who likes to follow along had a place to play. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, I know you had limited time with us today, and I believe that our time has ticked away here. Anything else you'd like to say to aspiring astronaut musicians? Anything else?
You're welcome to stay, Christopher.
Yeah, I got to go catch a flight. Actually, right now I have to go drive to the airport. I know I appreciate you inviting me in, but a lot of people do, as Summer said, consider spaceflight to be this very narrow, techie thing, but it is so incredibly deep and rich with people, and doing so many different things. And living on board a spaceship, it's just people up there, and we celebrate parties, and we have tragic days of sad things that have happened, and wonderful days, and we are a tiny little outpost, like a representative of all the 8 billion of us out there alone, very much with a life of service. And so to have a chance up there to tell each other's stories through music, to pass it to Roman Romanenko, who played in a Russian rock and roll band, and get him to play some of his music. And then, just to get people to talk about the songs of their childhood, or when it's a holiday in one of the countries, how do you celebrate this musically? And it just provided a common language for us all. But not only that, a real heartfelt link back with who we were. And I think it really helped form the camaraderie and the personality of the crew on board the space station. So that's going on up there right now with those folks. And I think it's a needed and really fun part of exploring the rest of the universe.
Excellent. Well, Chris, one more time, thank you so much for joining us today, especially right before your flight. I know how that is, but we will let you get on the way to the airport, fly safe, and continue making music. We really appreciate you.
All right. And Cady, we have practice starting 3 days before the Galveston gig in person. So be there. I'll see you in Houston in early August.
I have started. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks for having me in, everybody.
Hey, thanks for coming, Chris.
All right.
All right.
I'm signing out.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, that was fun.
That was very fun. Again, y'all, we only had Chris for limited time there. He signed out just to go blank where he is. I'll get that fixed in just a second. But the show's not over. We still have more time to talk about music in space. There's been other astronauts in space. Cady, you're sticking around to continue hanging out with us here, and that is not the end of the show. So
it's true.
Yeah.
And there was something I didn't want to tell Chris I didn't want to say until after Chris left. So you're welcome. Well, he was talking about, and they're doing that up there right now, up on that space station. Well, I don't know if it happened this time, but the last time that Kjell Lindgren went to space, he brought the bagpipes. So I don't know how it is up there. Okay.
It could be very loud up there.
Well, it's already kind of loud, so maybe that's maybe. Okay, I'm going to get all sorts of bagpipe hating, but I do like the bagpipes, and I got to meet a lot of bagpipe players when I play with the Chieftains, and really, I mean, it's astonishing actually the way they make all that work. But still, it is pretty funny to see it on the space station.
All right, Summer, I am going to need just a few seconds here to get us back in the mode, but give me just 2 seconds, and
no worries.
We should be ready to keep on keeping on here.
Summer, I was going to ask Summer. Well, of course, I love the pictures in back of you.
I got you.
I know. Well, I mean, but actually not just because of that. I mean, what I really liked about this, those are put out by I'm pretty sure by the Smithsonian Astrophysics Society, did they?
Yeah, and the Chandra,
yes. And so did you put them up there just for me?
I put a couple extra ones up just for you, but yes.
I helped launch the Chandra on STS 93.
I did not know that. That's so cool.
And I've been in touch with the people. They happen to be these two really neat women that run the website there. And Chandra, for people who don't know, is this X-ray telescope. It's like the sister of the Hubble, and it looks at X-rays as opposed to like visible light that we can see. X-rays is the really high energy wavelengths that are things like when stars explode. Those are supernovas. When galaxies collide, when black holes are sucking things in, they are spewing things out, and literally everything that we know today hinges on knowledge from Chandra, which was supposed to work for 5 years. We launched it in 1999, and it was only supposed to work for 5 years. It is still taking data and working. But on top of that, they have this great website where they really speak in plain language about this is why this is big, this is small, this is exciting. And on top of that, they're just really proactive in terms of thinking, how can we make sure that people know that the astronomy community is the community of the Earth, and it's supposed to reflect our world. And so they're really big on showing all sorts of people, especially women. And when Hidden Figures came out, they were ready. Like the day that came out, they published these pictures that Summer's got on her wall.
Yeah, I absolutely love the series. I have multiple copies in different locations. But speaking of Chandra, they also, along the lines of music, have done some sonification. Really cool projects where you can listen to the center of the Milky Way, and they assign different instruments or different tones to different aspects of the stars or the clusters or the emission that you're seeing.
They're really cool. And actually, I mean, not to push our podcast, but I will. But
That's
we have
fine.
a podcast called Mission Interplanetary. I'm on the faculty at Arizona State University, and myself and a co-host, Andrew Maynard, we basically are looking at, what are the big questions as we become an interplanetary species? Because we are. And we are going these places. And part of the podcast is put together by this amazing, wonderful drama professor named Lance Garavi, who is just so creative. He casts robots in shows and things like that. And anyways, Lance and Steve Christensen, who's the sound engineer, put together the sounds of space. And every week, they'll play something, and either Andrew or I, one of us will know what it is and the other one won't, and we have to imagine. And we've actually used the Chandra sonification several times.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There was one other random, very cool thing that I found when I was just watching some of your videos and some of Chris's that I didn't know even happened, that John Legend made a song where he used sounds of stars that NASA had recorded.
I did not know this. Summer.
And just as like a background and as part of the intro, I think it's just called Under the Stars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That is awesome. He's a wonderful man.
Yeah. Well, so I think we kind of touched on this before, but I saw that you wrote something. Actually, you say it in one of the videos too, that I just think is so accurate, that you feel strongly that no one goes on a journey like the astronauts do alone, and that you're taking other people with you. And your way of also doing that was taking other people's instruments up on
exactly. And I just felt like it was such a special thing. And you did get actually, it was sort of a funny story. We when we're going up on the Soyuz, we get, I think it is like 3 pounds, like 3 pounds of stuff that we can bring in a very small kind of bag, right? But if you're going up on the space shuttle, there's just more room for kind of your stuff, and instead of just a regular shirt, you could have some shirt that's special, or things like that. But then when I was assigned to the space station, the space shuttle was supposed to have retired by the time we were up there. And so I didn't have that opportunity. So I really didn't do any planning about what can I put in, a larger kind of space until those shuttle missions were not quite launched, or, the schedule was slipping. And suddenly I had a way for things to go up to space, but not only up, but down. Because, picture this conversation, talking to Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull saying, I would really love to bring your flute to space. Wouldn't that be cool? Oh, by the way, I won't be able to bring it home. And so it's going to burn up sometime. No one will find it. It'll be, I just didn't even have time to have that conversation. Yeah. But when that changed right away, we were allowed to bring some things, but they had to be like delivered to Houston in, within 2 weeks. And so it took some really frenetic kind of calling around. Ian Anderson had always I didn't know him, but I loved the fact that he brought the flute to rock music. And it made it so people like me could go, wow, there's this other kind of music that maybe I could play too, and improvisation and things like that. And the Chieftains, Patty Maloney's son, actually worked at NASA as an intern and went on to become he's a polymer engineer, a nanotech kind of engineer, which came from that NASA internship. But because he was there, then whenever the band would play, the Chieftains, the real Chieftains, then, he would invite some of us. And so that's how I knew them well enough to say, so, I'd love to bring your instruments. It has to be in 2 weeks. I'm going to bring them on a little business trip. It's going to be 93 million miles.
Speaking of bringing the flute to new types of music, I would love to see a collaboration with you and Lizzo.
Oh, I would be she's phenomenal. I love to play, and when I'm practicing, I think things are reasonable, but she is like, a phenomenon, I think. I would love, and if you have any contacts, I would love to meet her.
Just follow her on TikTok right now, but I can just keep commenting.
She is really, and the Irish flute one, did you see what she did? She did Irish.
I did not. I missed that.
It was amazing.
That's incredible. I also discovered when I was sort of reading up on stuff that the first music in space with instruments was Gemini 6, and they played jingle bells with the harmonica and a bell, or bells that are now in the Smithsonian. But I thought
that's cool. I did not know that, Summer.
Learn something new every day.
That's true. Well, and you know, Chris is really well spoken about it, about how much music means to people. And when you think back in history, even from the time, you know, there was cave people, I mean, people were making music, and it's a way to communicate. And in fact, during training, Chris and we actually started at NASA on the same day. And for me to play music with somebody improvisationally, there's just sort of this kind of something that has to work in terms of that, you know, who's leading, following, how's that all going. And there's just something like that. And he and his wife, I commuted in my marriage, and he and his wife were, you know, on a Friday night, they'd be home. They're like, come on over, Cady. And so we'd play some music. And I just think that being able to do that means, you know, so much to everybody, to be able to just, you know, say things, so to speak. But over time, you know, I can think of some occasions. I still actually cry when I see this. Frank Culbertson was up on the space station, Expedition 3, when 9/11 happened, and he actually was friends with the pilot of one of those planes, and so he played, I believe, Taps, either Taps or Amazing Grace. Now I can't quite remember, but I just know that, you know, for me, it brings me back up to that space station, but it makes me think of how it felt to be him, a person who's, you know, up there with 2 other crewmates, and, you know, has something happens on the ground that you have no control over, and it's hard to be gone. And at the same time, you can never be close enough. And it's a special, I think playing that music was really helpful for him and for everyone.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's really touching.
Definitely. But there's, and now there's all sorts of things. You were asking Chris if the guitar had to be made specially. And someone said, and maybe Summer, maybe you were talking about this when we first talked, that there was an instrument where they said, no, too flammable, can't bring it. And I was thinking it might have been Don Pettit making a didgeridoo and bringing the pieces out of wood.
Yeah, or I was going to ask like a clarinet, maybe. I don't know if some of the pieces of the clarinet.
That could be. That could be. I know with my flute, I actually kept them together. Like the flute often is in 3 pieces, you know, little one, the middle one with all the keys, and the mouthpiece. Yeah. And I brought, once I put those flutes together, I was afraid of like taking them apart, as you might do whenever you're done playing down here on the ground, because they would just like float away. And, you know, and literally something could be gone forever. I mean, the hardest thing about doing work and research up on the space station is that, if you lose the special cord that connects this and that, you're not going to work, you're not going to be able to do that. And if I lost one of the pieces of these flutes, and there's things that we really did, I found somebody's pocket knife that had been up there for 3 years, and suddenly there it was, just like floating in front of me. Right. So I kept the flutes together, and each of them was in their own t-shirt. And so Ian Anderson's was in a blue t-shirt because it's Britain. The chieftain's Irish flute was in a green t-shirt, and mine, because I like red, was in red. But I think I mentioned that I got to play along with Bandella, my friends, Chris and Mickey and Steve and Dan. They're down there on the ground playing. I'm playing along with them. And we had maybe a 30-minute block of time to play. And right before it ended, this alarm goes off on the space station. Oh, no. And when that happens, you just you go. And so I, just went. And then I knew we wouldn't reconnect because, it was the end of our time, and I went back to work, and it got to be like 11 o'clock at night. And I was going to bed, even though we're supposed to go to bed at 10. And, and I just thought, where's my flute? Like, it's not with the bundle. It was kind of like having a quiver of arrows, my quiver of flutes. I'm like, what could I have done with that? And it's because the alarm rang, and I just literally dropped it. It doesn't drop. And it just kind of like floated away. And there are places in the space station where we understand the airflow, and there's some screens that filter out any dust and stuff like that. And there was the flute.
up against the screen.
Like sucked against the ventilation filters or shaft or whatever. That was actually a question that somebody had asked when Chris was on. Did he lose any guitar picks? Because imagine like
ask that.
the entire flute floating away because the alarm went off. Imagine like little things like guitar picks and stuff. But
I would imagine. He's pretty meticulous, but if it was me, I would have brought a lot of guitar picks.
And real quick, I'll remind everyone, if you have a question, tag us in chat or just say the word question, and we'll see if we can't get some of the chat questions here that y'all are asking about music in space. We've got Cady Coleman here, who's played flutes in space, made music in space, and on the ground. And so if you've got questions, if you're a viewer, it's chat. I said chat to Chris, and then I realized, I didn't explain to him who chat was. The chat is all the viewers. That's y'all who are watching at home or wherever. Ask us some questions, and we'll see if we can pop in with some of those. Okay, y'all?
Yeah, Cady, I wanted to sort of talk earlier about the space shuttle program, because one of the fun things that you guys got to have was wake up music.
Yes.
And so I didn't get a chance to talk about it when Chris was here, because I think you mentioned that he was Capcom for one of your missions.
Actually, I don't know if he was for one of my missions, but he was the chief of Capcoms for a bit, and we were both Capcoms for many years, for different missions. Yeah. And one of the jobs, and Capcom is the capsule communicator, so it's the person in mission control that is speaking to the astronauts, and so they're kind of the interface between mission control and the astronauts up there. And there was a time when it was usually an astronaut that was doing that job, because they might have a little more empathy with understanding what people want to hear, or how they might need to hear it. Like, we know you've probably already done this, but we just need to do it one more time. Could you power cycle for us? Since power cycle is the ultimate solution, right? And on
and off again.
But that's different than, we'll take a power cycle, and up in space you're thinking, well, don't you know that we already did that? Like, why wouldn't we? And you feel unseen, unheard, and so the Capcom can be that person that kind of makes that happen. And anyways, but one of the duties that you have when you are on there's 3 shifts, there's sort of the morning shift, the evening shift, but one of the duties that you have if you're the person waking up the crew, is that you're in charge of the wake up music. And this can be actually fraught with danger, really.
Oh, no.
Because you're actually somebody else's. There's usually a family escort for the crew's family when there's a shuttle crew up there, and they're getting wake up music from all the different spouses or friends or whatever. And sometimes there'll be something where the Capcom is like, it's a really nice song, but we probably can't play that because it's family hour, because there's sometimes words and things like that. But for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, it's this amazing way for your family on the ground to say hello to you or your friends. And it's so, in picking songs, it's a way for you to say as an astronaut, because sometimes the astronaut themselves picks the wake up music, is to say, like Bette Midler, From a Distance. That's a Nancy Griffin song. And it's this, I don't know, it's this song that just makes me think of looking out into space and what it's like to look back at Earth. And so having that as a wake up song. So it's really interesting, the range of things that you play for people up there. And although I have to say, as a crew member, when you're on the shuttle, the speakers are not the best, right? Being designed in 1960 and everything. And so sometimes when they realize that it's going to be really hard to understand what song that is, sometimes a little help comes up to the commander, who, if the person doesn't seem to know what it is, will let them know.
Do you remember any choices that your family or your spouse made?
One of the things that actually Nancy Griffin was one of them for me, but also there's a woman, a friend that I met on an airplane, and this is where I think music brings people together. But all of us, you don't have to be going to space to be an explorer, to be somebody who's paving the way and bringing others along. And I got on an airplane one time and sat down early for once, Chris would laugh. And and this woman gets on the phone on the plane, and the flight attendant says, ma'am, we're going to have to check that guitar. And the woman looks at her and says, I don't think you understand. We can check me. We can put me in the baggage compartment, but we cannot check this guitar. And she looks around and she makes eye contact with all like the 3 rows in front of her. And she looks at everyone and she goes, together, we can do this. And these people got up, rearranged their stuff, and made room for this guitar, which come in there because there's always that room. Yeah. If somebody can be that person, and she is that person, and we've been friends ever since. And she wrote a song that's for me, but really for so many people. It's called "Brave New Girls," and it's got some neat lines about going to space and just. I don't know. It's if you look up Teresa and Brave New Girls, you'll find it. It meant a lot to me that she would write it. NASA gave her footage. I stayed out of this to not get in trouble, but NASA gave her footage. It's a really wonderful music video, and I'm proud to. And now she writes for the Girl Scouts. She does all sorts of. she's an amazing. She sang with Linda Ronstadt. She's an amazing singer and songwriter. So that led to a lifelong friendship, and her music played up on the space station. Sorry, on the shuttle.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful story.
I've got a couple questions from chat. If we could ask a couple of viewer questions real quick.
Yeah.
E.W. Kerman asks, do you think there are some types of music that are best played in space, like that make more sense? I don't know. Is it more fitting in space? Is the environment? Any thoughts on that?
Besides the bagpipes?
The bagpipes mostly. Yeah, just the bagpipes. Very small enclosed space. You have to be on a long duration journey to Mars or something, and let's make sure we take the bagpipes.
For so many, I don't think so. I do know that for me, music creates a certain mood. And it depends on what I'm working on. When we exercise up there, an hour a day at least. It's usually 30 minutes of cardio and an hour of weightlifting, so hour and a half. It's just really nice to listen to something. But even when you're doing tasks, having music in your ears is one, and it's not going to happen through the speakers. It's going to be your headset, for all I know, they have iPods up there, although I'd lose mine in a minute.
Check the air vent. It'll be on the air vent.
Imagine the earbuds, the AirPods would.
I know they'd be collected everywhere. I'll bet you they can't do that. But you're having especially on the space shuttle. The space station is a huge place, but the shuttle, is what the cockpit of an airplane is like, with sort of one floor below. It's a very small space for 6 or 7 people, even in 0G when there's more room. And so by having your headset on and just listening to music, it's the way you create your space. And for me, when I'm trying to write something or work on something, I need things without words. Other times, different things. The folks at Folk Alley, I don't know if anybody listens to Folk Alley, but they have playlists, and they're just all sorts of really wonderful. That's the kind of music that I love. Yeah. And at the time, you couldn't download those things, and so they sent downloads up to me so I could listen. But I don't think there's any special EW. I don't think there's any particular thing, and really, what's right for you is going to be right for you to bring to space for music.
Yeah.
And nobody can dictate that to you, and that's one of the reasons why I love that so many more people are going to space, so many more different types of people.
Mm-hmm. That's something we've talked about. It feels in the past that we've sort of technically gone to space, but the human element was always there. But the more and more human element we get there, arts and drawing things and painting in space and making music and all these things, the more prolific that is in space, that's almost sort of like when humanity has arrived, right? Because we're living there for long times,
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, I think there was a poetry contest when I was up there. And so I read the winning poem. And so that person got to go to space in a certain way. And Summer was talking about Gemini 6 and, Jingle Bells and the harmonica. There's more stories like that. Like I was saying, I didn't even know those stories, but there's more stories like that where you discover that, boy, those humans were there every minute after all.
Yep.
But more humans, more better, in my opinion.
I completely agree.
I
Another
like
question.
We'll see the tuba player. I'm wondering if the tuba player is going to be propelling themselves around.
You
Oh,
do a
right. I
backflip
love
from
it.
playing the tuba too much. Like, I think we'll need a Starship to get the entire tuba up there.
Hey, that is going to change. I mean, literally, we've been talking about what could you bring, and the fact that until we found out that the shuttle would be able to bring them back in the Soyuz, I couldn't have brought a flute.
Oh,
Right. And so now, we have supply ships bringing things up. So things are, but think about the Starship, how much bigger. And in fact, from one of the shuttle trips, we actually brought a keyboard up there.
Really?
It's a Yamaha
Yeah,
keyboard
I've
that
seen
runs
that.
on D batteries.
Whoa.
I think I had one of
And-
those when I was a kid.
And
I do.
Das, I think there's a picture. It's got, I think it's in the other astronauts thing, and it's
Yep.
got Drew Foystel and Greg Johnson as a keyboard player.
Yes, I've got
They
it.
came up on it's just 134, so just before we landed. Here it is. I love this picture.
Yeah.
And I think we're playing Brown Eyed Girl, and that's Drew Foystel in the middle. He's from a Purdue grad, as you can see there. I'm wearing my little MIT shirt that they brought for me. And you almost don't see Greg Johnson off on the right? Because we're just not used to kind of looking in this way. But I knew the shuttle was coming up. I knew who would be on it, and I wanted to make sure we were ready. And so I typed into the inventory management system, I typed keyboard, and there was like 200 entries. Like
Okay.
200. I'm like, how can? And then you realize every computer, everything has a keyboard.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I don't have time. Now let's narrow it down. What are the places that are big enough for the keyboard? And I figured out some logical ones. And sure enough, some of them, when I sorted, that came up. And that keyboard, the first person to play it is Susan Helms, who is this phenomenal musician who used to play in Max Q. And Max Q is another one of the astronaut bands, more of a rock band.
Mhm.
And some people will know General Helms as a several star general in the Air Force. But few of that Air Force crowd, I think, know that she is just the most fun. I mean, you can play literally a note and she will go, oh, and then she starts playing. And to have Susan playing up there, on the space station, she was Expedition 2.
Wow.
So we started with Expedition 1, 3 people, Expedition 2, the next 3 people. And so that keyboard has quite a heritage. And so it's pretty cool to know that. So that was 2000. We were 2011. I mean, 11 years later, Box is playing on that keyboard. We'll see what comes up.
Excellent. I've got another question here. I think I might know the answer because there are certain times of your mission where you really need to focus and pay attention, and other times there's sort of personal time. And I feel like launch is one of those times where you're paying attention. But the question was, could you choose soundtracks for different parts of the flight? Like launch, you could choose a song to listen to, and then when you get into space, the music changes. That's how I know I'm in space in Kerbal Space Program, right? The music changes. Is there anything like that where re-entry, here's some re-entry jams or whatever?
There is. I mean, in the beginning, you were sort of like, well, of course it can't be launched. But
Yeah.
actually, the Russians let the crew have a playlist. And it's this kind of, because no matter what, you are on your back for a few hours waiting for launch, right? Not that anybody's going to whine about that, because I would do it again. I'd spend all day on I would wait there forever to launch.
Yeah.
But we do get to have a playlist, which can be really fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I would say re-entry, no. I mean, so that's the playlist before you leave the ground,
Right.
Definitely crews have songs and themes and movies and that kind of thing. I don't know. One of my well, anyways, I was thinking of Austin Powers. There's a movie. One of the crews had that as like their theme. And Expedition 42 absolutely knew that the answer was 42.
There you go.
And look up their poster for space, because their crew poster, Expedition 42 crew poster, and it is an awesome Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy photo.
You know I'm doing that right now, right?
Good. Oh, that very good. Oh, cool, does.
You know the guy who can like type things on the keyboard here and
talk. That's not me.
Yes.
I was curious as to did anybody have the 2001 soundtrack?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think it would be a blessing and a curse. It's very
Heavy.
heavy. Exactly.
You know, I did do, it's funny what the music and movies and things like that we do. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Isn't that great?
It's an official NASA thing. That's a NASA graphic, so I'm sure we have permission to use
Verts, Butch Wilmer's right there with the teacup there. I mean, it's like a guy I would never think that's going to be Butch, right? He's actually one of the Boeing Starliner astronauts. Samantha off on the right there. Samantha is on the space station as we speak. And I mean, she's an Italian astronaut. We're friends. We've been friends for a long time. And, you know, she would actually often stay at my place in Houston just because, you know, my family was up north. And I mean, she's so smart, creative, and she really thinks about things. I mean, she's just brilliant in so many ways. And, but she's also brilliant, I think, about how to reach people. And up there, she has done the first TikTok from space. And I haven't actually checked in a bit, but I urge you to look up Samantha or at Astro Samantha, might be at Astro Sam, I forget. But she is TikToking. And Robonauts in that picture as well.
I see that. I love it. She's like the new Massimino because he was the first to tweet from space.
Yep. And right beside her was Elena Kondakova. There's Samantha. Yep.
Yep. It's Astro Samantha is her Twitter handle there.
Yeah, she is just totally awesome. And just the way, you know, they organize their flight and so international. I think, you know, sometimes we'll have, you know, more, it's usually some combination of US, European or Japanese or Canadian.
Right.
And by having that, and then the Russians, of course. And, but, you know, by having that mix together, it's, I don't know, it's just the right thing. It's the right thing to do. And, you know, I know that this has been it's been a time that's very difficult for many. And the fact that the space station can cross those boundaries and has continued to do the work of humans, you know, exploring space together and keeping that as their purpose is something I'm just quite proud of.
Gotcha. I'm going to keep going with questions. Summer, jump in if you have anything, but I've got one here ready to go. What challenges do you think that this violin player would face on Starship?
Well,
amazing.
Okay. So it depends. I would have definitely, you know, sort of like really, you know, tights or something on underneath. Okay.
Good
I'm
idea.
Just saying that dresses in space, you know, we've got to evolve. And actually, you know, people, I'm talking later on this week with someone who's designing fashion for space.
Okay.
You know, but I think that what would be interesting maybe is that in Starship, I mean, the people would be sort of around the ring and she'd be performing in the middle. I think, you know, it depends, but you really can't control when you're in the middle of nothing. You can't really control your position, and so eventually you drift somewhere, and somebody has to then hopefully gently, you know, push you back into the middle. But then you don't want it to turn into volleyball, right? But I wanted to say that something I've been working on that I just think is fascinating and just so important. Is I've been working with a group called Astro Access. It's one word, no spaces.
I love them.
Yep, absolutely.
And they are fascinating. And so this is a group that is working to basically have more disability in space, to advance disability in space. We have so many more people going to space. And instead of just asking the question, could disabled people or people who are disabled go to space? They're like, well, let's think about what the challenges are. What do you have to do? What's hard, what's easy? But the biggest thing is to realize that when you design things for more people, you make them easier to use for everyone. I mean, a real mundane, you know, Summer's nodding her head, you know, mundane example is curb cuts. You know, when the curb slopes down to the ground, it's something that was designed for blind people, but it's actually really useful for all of us, you know, hauling things around, being able to not have to step off a curb if that's not something that your gait can do.
Yep. I had to take a Pelican case down to Spaceport America last week, and I was feeling the very square curbs. dragging the pelican case off and
Exactly.
off the curb, and I'd never even thought about that. Wow.
Well, and what made me think of this was the picture that you showed of the violin player,
Yeah.
who I think it would be, we talked with Chris about, and myself about holding instruments, but I think she'd be fine holding her instrument. I think she'd have to, it's interesting up there, there's a sort of tendency to be a little curled up, and you have to learn how to sort of be your sort of shoulders back self in microgravity, I think. But she'd be fine to hold the violin. But it made me think of this, one of the folks in Astro Access I'm just, names run out of my head and I will find her, but maybe you can look her up. It's Victoria with a K in Astro Access. And she's a performance artist, and she's got an artificial leg. And up on the 0G airplane, she was using different artificial legs that would be more appropriate to microgravity, and literally dancing in space.
Amazing.
Very cool.
Summer, I wanted to know about your shirt. I wanted to know ever since we started the conversation.
I know, I wore it especially for Music in Space. It's just from like Threadless, one of those stores that just has different artists that can put their design, and then you can get it on a bunch of different types of items, clothing.
Really? It is awesome. Now,
Yeah.
are the colors indicative of the rainbow for LGBTQ?
No, I mean, I don't think so. It's just sort of probably just artist's discretion.
Cool.
Had it for a decade, probably.
That's awesome, because there is an Astro Access shirt that actually has like a multicolored sort of strip ribbon across the face of the astronaut, so to speak, but it's actually something that stands for disability. And so, I like a shirt like yours. I love things like that, where it's something people can relate to, but an astronaut is doing it. So what are they like? What are they really doing, right? And I just think that it's different than just having kind of a logo on your shirt that is just some space thing, because you're showing them something they can relate to. They can relate to space too.
Yeah, exactly. And along with the Astro Access, I've actually been participating in working groups and workshops with the parent, or the umbrella version, which is Psi Access.
Absolutely, they're the founders.
Yeah, which is such an amazing group, and I've learned so much with every event.
Me too. I mean, I consider myself to be somebody who's always trying to sort of like see a little wider and look a little wider and encourage others to do so. And I got to spend a couple of days with Astro Access, where we went on we're looking at how do we do these things? How do we solve some of the direct issues of, can you fasten your seatbelt? Can you navigate? Do you know if there's something important, a message, that you need to know about going on? And in doing that on the 0G airplane with the 0G Corporation. And I spent a couple days with the group, kind of coaching, 0G and coaching experiments and expectations. And it really opened my eyes so much, really, about the fact that we can tend to put people in a certain box, and when you let them out, you realize how much they bring that you've not been seeing. And it's embarrassing to say something like that, right? It's embarrassing to admit. And yet, unless you have those honest conversations, or just say, like, I was up there, there's one woman that was working really hard to get into her seat. And I said, well, Dana, you're not going to have to do that, because we're here, we're going to help. And she's like, Cady, I like to do these things by myself. And I was like, do you want help? And she goes, I really don't. And I said, okay. And you have to respect that, and to learn a lesson that, people really understand what they want. And another person, helped me kind of understand. He goes, well, Cady, what if you were going for a walk? You go for your walk every day, and then it's raining out, and somebody drives by and says, hey, do you want me to help you? And you're like, I'm just going for my walk. And so it just made a world that I hadn't understood a little more open to me, and a little easy. And I'm sharing that just because I think they're hard conversations, hard to ask people things that you think might be embarrassing to you, to them, or that you're supposed to know, but you don't. And we're never going to get through all these barriers unless we have those conversations.
Yes, absolutely. That's really neat that you're working with that organization.
And they're so fun.
Yeah. And so you have that organization you're working with, you have your upcoming concert. What other kind of things All right. Do you have your hands in these days?
I'm off to a workshop, a writing workshop with the Writing Excuses group. This is a cool podcast where they help people, everything from amateurs to people who are professional writers. There's something for everybody. And I'm working on a book. And a friend of mine, Mary Robinette Kowal, is an author that wrote a book, a series called the Lady Astronaut series. And actually, Shel Lindgren and I helped her with the sort of space part of that. And so I'm coaching at this workshop, but also learning a lot, hopefully myself. We're going off to a dark skies site at the Capitol Reef Field Station in Utah. And so we're going to get to do some space exploring and some exploring through the written word. And I guarantee you I'll learn really quite a lot from that.
And are you bringing your flute?
I am, just because of what Chris and I talked about, how, the concert is August 6th. And I wish I could say that I practiced every day, but life is busy. But I've discovered about myself that one of the ways that I do practice it, that I can sort of get myself to sort of jump in, is I just put on some music that Bandella, our band, plays, and I play along, because it's kind of where I like to be. Mickey Pettit, who's married to Don Pettit, is this magical singer, and she and I kind of, duel around and sort of weave back and forth. And so I actually wrote a note to the group saying, well, if anybody brings a guitar, maybe we can play. But in the meantime, I don't know, it's so special to be together, and I don't want to have to be worrying that I haven't practiced enough. So I'm inspired to be practicing a lot between now and then, so that I can just really enjoy being together.
Very cool. Das, how are those questions in chat looking?
I'm looking for some questions. There was one that was from Zapfan that says, how well does sound travel on the ISS? I've heard there's a difference. And Cady, you were talking about that earlier, where there were some parts that were sort of padded and a little bit more damped, I guess. And as you go from place to place, is there some place where it resonates, or your favorite place to play?
My favorite place was definitely the cupola. Just because you could, for two reasons, really. You could look out and just see, the Earth at night, or you could see the Earth at night, but you could also see the stars. It would actually cover up. It's really hard to make it dark enough that you really can see the stars. So you're covering up with tape, or we have a giant T-shirt that we're sort of, putting all over everything so nothing is showing. So it's really wonderful to see the Earth both in the daylight and at night. And then I did like it because it was in the middle of the space station. And I always worried, even though the sound is absorbed a lot in the Japanese module, I always worried a little bit that, somebody might wake somebody up, although our cabins are actually quite soundproof. I was thinking about some of the other people that have played up there. And, I think that now that Chris is gone, we can talk about him. But it's interesting. Well, it's interesting to me. I mean, being Canadian, actually, the U.S. space program is just, I joke around and I say that when Chris was up in space, everything went right down the Canadian pipe, and all three lawyers at the Canadian Space Agency would say, well, I don't know, it sounds kind of cool. Shall we put it on the internet? And I'm making that up, right? But and then someone did inform me that they only had one lawyer at the Canadian Space Agency, whereas we have a lot of lawyers, but for a reason, in that all of us are using tax dollars, and you don't want people to think that you are having too much fun or actually trying to make your best friend famous, or you can't abuse that privilege that you have of being up there. So there's some bureaucracy that happens. But the fact that Chris is Canadian, let him do some things that actually, and then nothing bad happened, and it raised the level of what people could do really for all of us. And my favorite example is that on I think it's like May 5th or something, it is it's a day when every kid in Canada in school sings the same song. Every year it's a different song. But the year that Chris was up there, that's when they sang a song with Chris and the Bare Naked Ladies. Right. And how many kids in Canada don't know that there's a space station? I'd wager very few.
Yeah.
And adults.
Yeah.
And so this music can be that platform that allows us to kind of make people aware of things that, they might not have been, so to speak. And so I don't know, just the different people have done different art things up there. Nicole Stott is an artist and painted pictures up there. There's just I don't know, a lot of different folks that and I think it's actually it's generous of them to share themselves when they're up there. Karen Nyberg loves to sew. I mean, she is a quilt maker, an extraordinary quilt maker, and she made things for her kid while she was up there. And yet that's, you're sort of brave enough to say, hey, I'm going to do this. And I like to say that when you're really being the best team member you can be, you have to be both brave and open. And, for me, playing the duet with Ian Anderson, I think I had to be brave as a, recreational flute player to ask Ian Anderson, hello, can I bring your flute to space? And can we figure out something to play? And, he had to be open. He didn't know me from anybody. We'd never met. He never asked, can you play or not? Can you send me some things you've played? He never asked that question. He understood exactly what we were talking about, that we're talking about reaching people through a different mechanism than, the science section of the newspaper is going to do.
Right.
Yeah. Cady,
you mentioned,
a real quick question. Cady, we've got somebody that says you're so interesting when you talk. Can we get links or information about your podcast? You've mentioned a podcast or multiple podcasts so far. How can they find you?
You can find me on my website, which is cadycoleman.com. And there's links to those things on there. Our podcast is called Mission Interplanetary. And there's a website for that as well, just Mission Interplanetary, all one word. And I'm actually quite proud. I mean, it's been interesting to me to talk with you today, because on that podcast, we're trying to ask, what are the questions that people want to know, that they want to talk about, for the future of space exploration. And it's everything from, we talked about, should the first mission to Mars be all women? Okay. Because, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it actually really might be our turn, right? and yet, I'm not somebody that thinks that we should be, bringing, all one kind of person up to space. And so Mary Robinette Kowal and Tanya Harrison, who you'll find her on Twitter as The Martian. Tanya.
Yeah.
She's awesome,
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
And we actually we did that, and it's just an honest discussion. And this past season, we talked about, there's a lot of research being dedicated to Mars and also to Venus. And so we had Tanya and Joe O'Rourke, who's a professor at Arizona State University, have like a smackdown about, should we be funding
Venus versus
Venus or Mars? It was really fun. And I have my cats. I have two cats. And so they sort of faced off about who liked Venus and who liked Mars. And we talked about Astro Access as well on the podcast. Sometimes informative things like, what about space debris? Like, is it bad? Is it as bad as they say? Do we have plans to do something about it? And I think our podcast is a really good way to find out actually a very surprising fact, which is that until the last few years, we could only see things or track them that were about 10 centimeters big. And with the new instrumentation that we have, we can now count objects that are 1 centimeter big. So we were tracking happily 27,000 objects. It's still a very crowded place in space. And now it's over 200,000 objects. So do we need to be having all hands on deck about space debris? The answer is yes. How to not generate it, and how to take care of the stuff we already made.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a long answer just to your question.
Oh, no, that makes sense. I was going to show this real quick. You could actually click on podcast up at the top of Cady's website, and it'll scroll down to the Mission Interplanetary section there where it has the podcast. I mentioned there's playlists, different ways to watch. Check out the podcast on your favorite platform. But that was a good question. Thank you all for that one. I've got another one here that is there a rhythm to the space station? Like, are there a series of pumps or whirs or clicks that you could sort of make music to? I don't know. I can't name any songs like that, but I've heard songs where it's like, and then somebody makes a melody that goes along with this sort of mechanical noises or something. Anything like that up there?
I think it's a brilliant question. And, and it shows you why we need more people to go. Like I was up there for 6 months. It never occurred to me to think that way. And, I would say one thing about the sound up there is, I would say, and it depends where you are, what equipment is running and when. And we have some equipment that will come on for just a while. And there are things that are making those noises. And I think that is a fabulous project. But, for me, I'm married to a glass artist. And so we have glass furnaces out in the barn, across the driveway. And it's actually incredibly eerie. I can actually tell. And so not to the same degree that he can, but you walk into the building, when something isn't working right, when the feed between, oxygen and gas is off. And now in the summer, we have the furnaces off, and to walk in there, it's just the absence of sound. And I have to say that there's a lot of white noise on the space station. There's a lot of fans, equipment running, and, shielding it, putting mufflers, putting, fabric on it, is something that when you're thinking about bringing it up there, that's all weight that's added, right? But now you're going to live with it for years. And you might think, well, we'll just say, well, we'll use the OSHA regulations. Yeah. But the OSHA regulations are based on the fact that you go to work someplace perhaps noisy, but then 8 hours later, right, you come home and you leave and you go home and it's quiet. So that's what those numbers are based on. And actually, one of the things I'm pretty proud of is being part of some of the acoustics work, working with the different countries, trying to find a way. Maybe your country doesn't have a way to do that, but we do. What if we come over and consult, and then and we have materials, all sorts of sharing to make it the safest, best place. But it is pretty loud. And I know that one crew member came home, and after landing, there was sort of like a little party around them in Star City. People all gathered because it landed safely. And he was talking to the flight doc, and he goes, can you hear that? And the flight doc's like, no, what is it? He goes, it's so quiet. Like here was what to us was a noisy party. And it was an early space station flight, right? They're much better now. But I would love to, I think that's a great idea. And that's why having so many cool people go up there that are different is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that when I try to go to sleep at night, it's like something's wrong. What's wrong? Oh, the fan's off. All right, turn on the fan.
Yep,
you can sort of tell when you get used to something like that. Summer, go ahead.
That question just reminds me of, so for probably for other wavelengths as well, but for radio receivers, you have to cool them cryogenically. And so each cryo unit has its own pump and its own rhythm, because it depends on the size of the detector.
Really?
Yeah. And so if you go into like the room where all the detectors are going, it's kind of like this really funky DJ beat sort of going on. And I've heard that at least some people that work in the cryo field for decades, they have that talent like doctors do for heart murmurs, where they can tell which pump's off and why just by listening.
I would believe it. Summer, I want to know how music features in your world.
I actually have 2 good morning playlists that I listen to, but one of them is actually not as loud or not as 0 to 60, because I struggle with anxiety and depression. And so I have one that's sort of like, I'm not ready to really go into the day, but this is kind of my transition.
And so music can really can help you be in the right frame to then start your day.
Yeah. And especially, picking certain songs that speak to what I want to be part of that day, so to speak.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I do playlists kind of based on moods or mood transitions that I want to.
And do you think it's about the words or the music or both? Definitely
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm somebody that can't really hear the words in the song.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll have played it for years and have no idea what it's about, because I just experience it in a different way.
It depends on the song, because there's definitely some songs where I definitely probably don't know all the words, and that doesn't matter. But then there's other ones where they're specifically on that list because of the lyrics in combo with the beat or the melody.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Chris wrote a song that we played. It's called Big Smoke. And it was interesting to me to see how that song would mean different things at different times.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there during Challenger, but I was still at NASA for Columbia. And I remember when I mean, it had been a while, and I think that we were actually back for the actually return to flight after Columbia, and the band, everybody happened to have assignments down there in Florida, and we just thought we arranged to play at, you know, just a local place that everybody knows, and it, you know, provided a place for people to be together, because it had been such a really hard time. I mean, we all lost friends, not just astronauts, but the whole space community lost people. And the song is called Big Smoke, and he and his brother wrote it, and it's about sort of when a rocket launches, that big plume of smoke that you see going towards the sky, and how it actually then has a personality of its own. I mean, if it's windy, it's moving, and all those kinds of things. And you know, and I would say, you know, after Columbia, that song, I mean, I would cry while playing that song, because it really represented those people. That, I mean, it wasn't about those people, but just it made me think in a visceral way about launching. But then when we played for the return to flight, and people were all there, it was about that the future involves this too, and that this is what we do, you know, whether, you know, there's, you know, and so I just think it played a really, the same song could sort of go both ways in a way.
Oh, absolutely. But speaking of Columbia and Challenger, there's a wonderful song by the Long Winters called The Commander Thinks Aloud, which is about the Challenger.
Wow.
And it's a really beautiful song.
It's interesting to me, I mean, that people really, they really identify, like there's many people that will say, I know exactly where I was when one of these accidents happened. And to me, I think the reason for it is that there's something very hopeful about spaceflight, about the fact that there's somewhere else that we haven't been and real people are going. And when something happens, which we know there's always a risk, and I think all of us, you know, take on that risk in different ways. But when something really happens, it kind of reminds you of the black and white statistics that, you know, there you know, loss happens in exploration, that it can make you just think, wait a minute, maybe it wasn't just, everything isn't possible after all. And sometimes it just takes a little while to climb your way back to realizing that, I mean, there's something really compelling about space. And I think it, you know, I think that space itself, and getting to go, and all the different space programs, and especially the new ones, the new ways to get more people to space. I think that they really help reinforce that there's always a different path. There's always going to be a path forward. It just might take a little changing around and looking at things differently.
And do you know the former poet laureate, Tracy K. Smith?
No, I don't.
She had a collection of poems called Life on Mars, but her dad worked on the Hubble space program.
Really?
Yeah.
That is just the coolest thing. My dad was actually in exploration. He was a deep sea diver in the Sea Lab program when, in this case, men first lived under the sea. And, you know, I'll say that, you know, exploration was real for me because of growing up with my dad.
Oh, absolutely. Also, before chat corrects me, Das, that song, The Long Winters, is about the Columbia, not the Challenger.
Thank you. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see anybody over there, but
that was just in case. I expect people on the internet to catch that.
I'll watch the comments, the VOD comments afterwards, and to make sure they know. Here's a quick question. We're coming up on the end of our time here, Cady, and thank you so much for spending so much time with us. This is sort of one of those out there questions, but I'm
afraid.
It's okay. It's okay. If you could go anywhere in the solar system and make music, where would you want to go, and why would you want to go there? Because of the backdrop, because of the, like, where it is, because it has some meaning? Is that something you've ever thought of?
I mean, it's not just about making music. It's really just like, where would I like to go?
There you go.
And it's definitely Mars, but that doesn't mean, you know, I am still here. Moon, I would go moon, right? I mean, all the, you know, these, I forward, you know, it's about going forward.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that the actually most logical place to start is the moon. I love the fact that Alan Bean, we have pins that we get when we pass our astronaut candidate selection. It usually takes a year or two to get through, where everyone's sort of learned everything and been certified that now we're astronauts and we can go on missions, and we get a little silver astronaut pin.
Right.
And then when we fly in space, we get a gold pin. I think we have to buy these things, by the way.
Oh, really?
We don't care. Certainly we have to buy them if we ever lose them. But I think we do actually. I can't remember. We sort of pay dues.
Sure.
Like that. But anyways, but these pins are special, right? And so Alan Bean took his silver pin with him to the moon. And before he left, he took that pin and he threw it as far as he could. And I love looking at the moon. I love it anyway, but I love looking at the moon and thinking that Alan Bean's pin is up there. And he's an artist astronaut. He was just he took a lot of time and trouble to come and talk to the new astronauts and was always open to hearing from us. But just knowing that pin is up there. And so when you say, where would you like to go next? I would say wherever someone is going and there's a seat, I would love that seat.
There you go.
Spaceflight is addictive. It's important. But ultimately, we definitely are going to Mars, and I'm excited to see what kind of music they make. They're going to be like, oh, that's like Earth music. I mean, music is going to evolve, and it's going to evolve on the moon too. So I think there'll be some exciting times and then some exciting, podcasts and panels ahead.
Gotcha. I think once they get to the belt, it's all reggae out there. If the shows I've seen on TV have taught me anything.
Metallica. Actually, got a guy that I went to, Fred Leslie, NASA scientist. I went to space with him on STS-73, longest flight we'd had ever when we did that flight. Yeah. And he is a Metallica fan. And that was fun.
Excellent. That's some wake-up music when it's time to wake up, isn't it?
Totally. Right.
Excellent. Well, Cady, it is now 5:01. We have taken you just up to the end of the time that we have with you today. I cannot say thank you enough for sharing your thoughts and experiences, not just about music in space, but about being in space and about being human and all the different things that you've been sharing with us today. Thank you so much for the time here.
Well, thanks for being such a neat show that, you can talk about real life. And just your listeners are fascinating, and I love your shows. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
happy to be on it.
Excellent. And there was actually someone in chat that says this is so amazing, where we can connect with a real astronaut, and it's not a presentation. We can ask real questions. So thank you so much for just being available here on the show today. And thank you to Chris as well. Thank you for introducing us to Chris and having him come over and join us. But
I think it was a lucky thing. I don't think we could have planned it, with his schedule and everything. So it was awesome.
Excellent.
And I just have to make the plug,
Sure.
August 6th, Houston, well, actually Galveston, at the Grand. There's something magical that happens when we get together, this band and the people that come and see us. It's really, it'll just be an exploration time, I think. And I think it'll be pretty neat. So if you're in doubt, I would head that way, August 6th, even though I know it's Houston, Galveston in August.
Oh, geez.
But, you got to go for the love, I'm
going to put that link into chat one more time. There it is. It's thegrand.com/Bandella and some more stuff. But that is a place where you will be playing with your band. Chris and the others down in Houston coming up in August, right?
It'll be great. Chris Hadfield, Steve Robinson, Dan Burbank, Mickey Pettit, and myself.
All right. Let's see here, y'all. We've got the housekeeping that we do sometimes. The Virtual Astronomy live shows don't just magically happen. They do take a lot of work behind the scenes, technical checks, and just meetings where we get to know the people that we're going to be talking to and that sort of stuff. So also, remember that Virtual Astronomy Live is supported through a NASA cooperative agreement awarded to the New York Space Grant Consortium. The program's also supported, this part's new, in part by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership with the City Council and the New York State Council on the Arts, and the support of wow, this is all new stuff they put in here for me to read. In the support of Governor Andrew M. Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. That got a lot longer than the last time I read it. Keep in mind we do these shows on a monthly basis. So the next Virtual Astronomy Live is going to take place on Sunday, July 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And the topic is going to be about the 10-year anniversary of the decommissioning of the Space Shuttle program. That's going to be very interesting to hear about. Before that, though, remember at the beginning, Alicia told us about the special event that's going on with Space Shuttle Enterprise. So Enterprise is at the Intrepid Museum, and on Thursday, July 14th, former NASA astronaut Mike Massimino, you've seen him on the show before, and the museum's curator of aviation, Eric Boehm, it says pronounced Boehm. And they highlighted it like I'm supposed to read that. Eric, we love you. Eric's been on the show as well. Going to go inside the Space Shuttle Enterprise there with a camera for behind-the-scenes look. So to learn more, check out intrepidmuseum.org. If you're watching us here today, whether you're on Intrepid's Twitch, you're on Intrepid's YouTube, you're a NASA Spaceflight viewer, my Twitch, Facebook, all across the board, y'all know how to find this sort of content if you want to find it again in the future. Like and subscribe, or whatever the kids are saying these days. Also, make sure you check out Cady's website, CadyColeman.com, right? Yep. Yeah, CadyColeman.com. Or you can keep up with her. She's got the podcast we were talking about. Speaking of events, of course, the band that we were talking about. Lots of ways that you can stay plugged in. But Cady, thank you so much again for the time here today. We always appreciate it when someone with your sorts of experiences and all of the things that you have to talk about makes time out of their weekend on a Sunday to spend with us. And we just can't say thank you enough.
Well, thank you. It was really fun. I mean, really fun to talk about music.
It really is. And of course, you've seen Summer Ash before, y'all. Summer Ash, our moderator. Summer, thank you so much here today for spending time with us, literally just sharing experiences.
Always a pleasure. This was so fun, Cady.
For me too.
Yeah,
totally.
It really was. And there are so many nice messages in chat right now. People saying thank you so much. Thank you so much. Great show, great subject, a true inspiration, just all across the board. Somebody said that it was totally bonkies. Thank you. That's an inside joke, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. Cady was great, just across the board. Amazing show today. Chat, thank y'all. I'm looking over here, but I'm going to point at y'all. Thank y'all for joining us here. But for now, that is going to bring us to the end of Virtual Astronomy Live, and we will see you nerds later. Thanks again for watching, and be on the lookout next week for some stuff going on with Starship. You never know what SpaceX is going to get up to, but we'll be covering it.
Thanks a lot.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down speed off. Bring in speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.